Hey guys, today we're here to talk about 5 things I love about the Sony A7 III as a longtime Canon user. Number 1 is eye autofocus. This feels like magic. I've been shooting professionally for almost a decade and I've never had a session with as high a hit rate as my very first one with the A7 III. Because the focus is actually happening on the sensor itself and it doesn't have to bounce around through a mirror and a pentaprism before hitting a separate autofocus sensor, when the camera thinks the image is in focus, it actually is because it's using the pixels to do that. This actually feels like magic. It's incredible. Number 2 is the electronic viewfinder. To be able to see what you're shooting while you're shooting is so empowering. It speeds me up so much to not need to pull my camera down and chimp and double check, make sure that I hit the exposure. I'm never gonna miss a shot again because I was chimping. I don't need to do it anymore with the Sony. And you can always just expose for the highlights because the shadow detail is so good in the files from this camera. You can turn on zebra stripes to show up as soon as any part of the image is overexposed, and then just pull down your exposure until you're not seeing the zebra stripes anymore, and you're almost always gonna be guaranteed to have a usable file. It's incredible. It is so empowering and so much more efficient. Number 3 is file quality. I can take an image shot with this camera at ISO 50 and push it 5 stops, and there's still effectively no noise in the shadows. What this means is that on a bright sunny day when I'm shooting a wedding ceremony outside, I can expose for the highlights. My shadows look dark in the preview, but I know I can pull the information out of those shadows afterwards in post. I have way more dynamic range to work with. At the other end of things, the high ISO is the best ever seen in a full frame camera according to DxOMark. I would feel comfortable shooting this camera at ISO 12,800, whereas I wouldn't have shot my 5D Mark IV above ISO 4,000. Between these two things, this means I can get more usable images in more situations and deliver more for my clients. I'm just a more flexible photographer now. Number 4 is in-body image stabilization. This camera has 5-axis, 5-stop stabilization built right into the camera so that every lens you have, including your fast 1.4 glass, is now image stabilized. You also don't have the added cost and the added weight of putting a stabilizer on every lens that you buy, like with Canon or Nikon. Combine that with the amazing high ISO capabilities, and this thing is a monster for shooting in the dark. I can take a 135 f2 and get sharp images at 1/50th of a second, or take a 35 1.4 and get usable images at 1/5 of a second. I could never do that before. So now I can take more usable images in more scenarios. Again, more flexible photography. Number 5 is the ability to adapt your existing Canon lenses to this camera using the Sigma MC11 adapter. So that means your Sigma Art lenses, your Canon EF lenses, your L lenses, whatever you've got, you can still use it on here. Eye autofocus still works with Sigma Art glass. It still works with newer Canon glass, specifically a lot of the L glass, and older ones still autofocus really effectively, you just don't have eye autofocus. I'd say the native Sony lenses still focus a little bit faster and maybe a little bit more accurately with moving subjects using the adapter, but if your subject is standing still, you can use your Canon lenses no problem and be sure that everything is going to be tack sharp.